He snatched the keys from my hand so hard the metal bit into my palm. "You're dead to me," my own son, Michael, hissed right into my face. My mouth filled with the taste of iron, and the world went silent. I felt tears sting my eyes, but I swallowed them back, pushing down the shame that bubbled up inside me. I was frozen there in the doorway, staring at the front door. Did anyone see? I felt their eyes on me. Mrs. Gable across the street, a teenager on his phone, the mailman walking away. Everyone was just pretending not to see what was happening to me. Michael turned his back, shoving my keys into his pocket like they were his to take. "I'm taking the car," he said, not even looking at me. "You don't need it anymore." He meant it too. His eyes were cold like a winter morning. They weren't my son's eyes, they were a stranger's eyes. I wanted to scream, to grab him and shake him. "Michael, stop," I whispered, my voice thick with fear. He just laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. What was he doing? Why was he punishing me? I just wanted to know what was going on. I had a terrible feeling this was just the beginning. The front door was still wide open, and the house felt colder than it ever had before. I knew deep down there was a secret hidden in my son's heart, and I was terrified of what it was. I heard footsteps pause outside the door and then hurry away. It was Mrs. Gable, I knew it. She had definitely seen Michael grab the keys from me. I wanted to hide. I wanted to disappear. Inside, my son, Michael, turned and hissed at me. "Mum, stop making scenes." His words felt like another slap. My hand was still shaking, and I put it in my pocket, hiding it from him. Why was his big travel bag already packed and sitting by the door? He just stood there, looking at me like I was a problem to be solved. "Where are you going, Michael? What's going on?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He didn't answer. He just picked up the bag and walked past me out the door. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't even look back. He just left me there, a ghost in my own home. I heard him start my car, and drive away. My legs felt weak and I had to sit down on the stairs. He'd told me to stop making a scene, but he was the one who just left me here, alone, without a car, without a son. My house felt so empty and quiet. My own son, Michael, had just left me, and I couldn't understand why. What was he really doing, and why was he in such a hurry to leave? The next day, Michael came back. He walked into my kitchen and poured himself some cold tea from the pot I had just made. He didn't even say hello. He just looked at me with those cold eyes again. He started to look around my house, slowly, like he was a realtor and not my son. He looked at my old dining table, the one his father had built. He looked at the family photos on the wall. "This place is wasted on you," he said, and my heart dropped. It was my home, my memories, my life. Who had taught him to talk to me like a stranger, like an old lady who didn't know what she was doing? I wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come out. I just stared at him. "Michael, this is your home," I finally said. He just scoffed. "Not anymore," he said, and his eyes got even colder. "You won't be needing all this space." He sounded so sure of himself, so sure of something I didn't know about yet. He wasn't just looking at the house, he was looking at my things, my life. My heart started to beat faster. It was like he was a wolf circling around, getting ready to take what was mine. What did he mean by that? And what was he going to do with my home? I tried to call my son Michael a dozen times. Each time the screen showed his name, then the call was declined. He wouldn't even let my call go to voicemail. I felt my stomach twist. I started to text him, my fingers shaking as I typed. "Michael, please call me, what's going on?" The little bubbles showed he read it, but there was no reply. I waited and waited. Then he sent me a text back. "We'll talk when you're rational." His words cut deeper than a knife. My voice, my sadness, my fear. He saw it all as a problem. Something he could just shut off. I stared at the phone. My voice was all I had left, my way to reach out. When did it stop being enough? When did it become irrational? I sat in my quiet living room, the TV off, the whole house feeling like it was holding its breath. I kept looking at my phone, hoping for a miracle, for him to call me back and say he was sorry. But the screen stayed dark. I felt so alone. What was he doing? Was he really going to just cut me off like this? What was his endgame? I was starting to realize this wasn't just a fight. This was a war. And he had already taken the first steps. It happened at the pharmacy. I went to pick up my heart medicine, like I do every month. I handed the clerk my debit card. He ran it through the machine and a red light flashed. He tried it again, but the little screen showed the same message. Insufficient funds, the clerk whispered, loud enough that the woman behind me looked up. My face burned with shame. I knew I had money. My husband, bless his soul, had made sure of it. I had just checked the bank account a week ago. I felt a cold fear creep up my spine. My son Michael was the only other person who had access to my accounts. He had helped me set up online banking after my husband passed. He said it was just so he could help me if I ever had a problem. But this was more than a problem. This was a robbery. My own son had taken my money. "Who touched my accounts?" I whispered, my heart pounding in my chest. The clerk just stared at me. I walked out of that pharmacy without my medicine. Was he trying to take everything from me? And if he could take my money, what else could he take? I got to church on Sunday, my heart still aching from the pharmacy incident. I saw Mrs. Gable and the other ladies from my circle. I smiled, but their smiles didn't reach their eyes. They quickly looked away and whispered to each other. I walked to my usual pew, but they moved to a different one. My stomach dropped. I sat alone, feeling more alone than I had all week. After the service, I went to say hello. "We heard you're moving to a facility," one of them murmured, looking at her shoes. My blood ran cold. "What?" I asked. "A facility? What are you talking about?" I looked at Mrs. Gable, hoping she would explain. She just looked sad and shook her head, walking away. My hands started to tremble. Who started that rumour? It had to be Michael. He had to be the one who told them. He wanted everyone to think I was old and crazy, that I couldn't take care of myself. He was turning my friends against me. He was trying to take my life piece by piece, not just my money or my home. I felt like a net was closing in on me. What was he planning to do to me next? Was he going to tell everyone else? The postman had already come and gone. But there, under the welcome mat, was a big envelope. No stamp, no address. Just my name written on it in a fancy flowing script. Inside was a glossy brochure for Sunset Pines Senior Living. The paper felt slick and cold in my hands. A little note was tucked inside. "It's for your own good, E." Who in the world was E? The handwriting was so familiar, but I couldn't place it. The E was written with a little swirl at the end, just like my late husband used to do. But it couldn't be. Could it? My heart hammered against my ribs. Was this from my son, Michael? Or was it from his wife, Sarah? I didn't know which was worse. This wasn't a suggestion. It felt like an order. Like they had already decided my future for me without even asking. "It's for your own good," the note said. But it didn't feel good at all. It felt like a trap, like they were trying to put me away somewhere. They wanted to take my house and put me in a home. The thought made my blood run cold. Who was E? And what did they want from me? The doorbell rang, and it was my daughter-in-law, Sarah. She was wearing a fancy dress and smelling of perfume. It was too much for a normal Tuesday afternoon. She looked at me with her head tilted, a look of pity in her eyes. It was a look I hated more than anything. "We can help you downsize," she said, her voice dripping with fake kindness. I just stared at her. Downsize, I repeated. I'm not going anywhere. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She kept walking around my living room, her eyes darting from one thing to another. She stopped and looked at the old china hutch. My mother's china, the one that had been in my family for 100 years, was inside. That hutch is so big, she said, almost to herself. Why did she keep looking at it? Was she just pretending to care about me? Or was she here for something else? My son Michael and his wife Sarah were a team. I knew it now. They weren't just trying to get me to move, they were trying to take my things. But what did they want with my china hutch? What was so special about it? After Sarah left, I went around my house, a strange feeling in my gut. I started to gather all the spare keys I had. The keys to the front door, the back door, the shed in the garden, and the old trunk in the attic. I laid them all out on the kitchen table and counted them. 1, 2, 3, 8. I was sure there should be 10. 2 were missing. My heart began to pound in my chest. When were they taken? Who had a copy of my house keys? My mind went back to the day Michael came and snatched my car keys. He had been so quick, so sneaky. I bet he made a copy of my house keys then too. He probably did it when I wasn't looking. My own son, a thief in my own home. I felt a chill run through me. He had a way in. He could come and go as he pleased. The thought was terrifying. It wasn't just my money or my memories they were after. It was my safety. I was not alone in my house, but I wasn't safe either. My keys were missing. Was it Michael? What was he planning to do with them? I was getting ready for bed, the house quiet, when I heard my son, Michael, on the phone. His voice was coming from the living room and it sounded strange. I put my ear to the vent in the floor, the kind that lets the heat rise up. I shouldn't have listened, but I did. I needed to know what was going on. Once she's placed, he said, his voice low and cold, we can renovate fast. My stomach dropped. I knew what he meant by placed. He meant putting me in that home, that place from the brochure Sunset Pines. I wanted to run out there and scream at him. My own son, talking about me like I was a piece of furniture he could just move. Fast, I whispered to myself, my heart pounding. Fast for who? For him and his wife, Sarah? So they could get my house and fix it up to sell it, or maybe to live in it themselves. The idea made me sick. I didn't want to live in a facility. This was my home. My husband built this house for me, piece by piece. Michael didn't care. He was going to put me in a home and take everything I had. I pulled my ear away from the vent. I felt like I was listening to a stranger, not my son. What was he planning to do next? The next day, I went to see Mr. Patel, a lawyer who had helped my husband for years. His office smelled like old books and coffee. He was an old man with kind eyes behind his glasses. I sat down and told him everything. He listened without saying a word, just nodding sometimes. After I was finished, he took off his glasses and cleaned them with a handkerchief. "Have you signed anything lately?" he asked me, his voice soft. "Any papers? Any legal documents?" I thought hard. I hadn't signed anything. Not that I could remember. Had I? Michael had given me some papers a few months ago, some banking things, he said. I had just signed them because I trusted him. My heart started to beat faster. Could it be? Was it possible he had tricked me into signing something I shouldn't have? My son, Michael, had been so helpful, or so I thought. But now, after what I heard, I didn't know what to believe. Mr. Patel's eyes were watching me. He knew something was wrong. But what had I signed? And what did it mean for me? Mr. Patel came back a few minutes later with a piece of paper. It was a photocopy of a document. My name was signed at the bottom. But when I looked at it, I knew. It was my name, all right, but the handwriting wasn't mine. Mr. Patel's face was serious. "This is your name," he said, "but this is not your hand." The truth hit me like a slap in the face. My own son, Michael, had tricked me. He had forged my name on a legal paper. The paper was a deed to the house. It said I had given the house to Michael. I felt like the floor was falling out from under me. I hadn't signed anything. My heart pounded. He had a fake paper, a fake signature, and he had a reason for it. He was trying to take my house. He wasn't just trying to get me to move, he was trying to steal my home. Mr. Patel looked at me with pity in his eyes. He said something, but I didn't hear it. I was so angry, so hurt. My own son had betrayed me in the worst way. He had forged my name. But how? And what was I going to do about it? I was looking out my kitchen window when I saw him. A man with a clipboard walking all around my house. He had a tape measure and was looking at the roof, the windows, and the side of the house. I opened the door and walked outside. The sun felt warm, but a cold feeling was spreading through my stomach. "Can I help you?" I asked. He looked at me, a little surprised. "I'm just an appraiser," he said, not even looking up from his clipboard. "Exterior only." My heart started to race. An appraiser? Why would an appraiser be at my home? Who gave him permission? My son Michael. It had to be him. He was trying to get a value on the house so he could sell it. He thought he could do this behind my back without me knowing. But he was wrong. I was still here, and this was still my home. The man kept walking around, writing on his clipboard. He wasn't even looking at me anymore. I felt like I was invisible. He was here to take a piece of my life, to put a price on my memories. But he wasn't going to get away with it. How many other secrets was Michael keeping from me? And what was I going to do to stop him? I opened my mailbox and there was a big box of letters, not the usual kind. These were final notices. My hands started shaking as I sorted through them. The electric bill, the water bill, the internet bill. Each one had the same message printed on it in big red letters. Autopay cancelled. Michael had set up the autopay for me a while back, so I wouldn't have to worry about bills. But now he had turned it off. He was trying to make my life hard. He wanted me to miss payments so he could say I couldn't take care of myself. I sat down at my kitchen table, my head in my hands. The box of bills felt heavy in my lap. I had always been good with money, and my husband had left me with plenty. But now, my money was gone, and so was my way to pay my bills. This wasn't just about taking my house. It was about making me seem helpless, like I was a little kid who couldn't take care of myself. What else had he switched off without my knowing? My phone, my health insurance. I felt like a net was closing in on me, but I wasn't helpless, and I was going to prove him wrong. The phone rang, and it was my adopted daughter, Lily. She lived out of state, and we hadn't talked in a while. I was so happy to hear her voice, but when she started talking, it sounded wrong. Her words were stiff and rehearsed, like she was reading from a script. "Mom," she said, her voice shaky, "they say you're confused, that you're not safe at home alone." My heart sank. Who had told her that? Michael. It had to be him. He had convinced my own daughter that I was losing my mind. "Lily, that's not true," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm fine, I'm scared, but I'm fine." She didn't listen. "They say you need help," she said, "that you're not thinking straight." Who wrote her script? I knew Michael had. He was using my own daughter against me. He was making me feel crazy, all so he could take my home. It was a new low, even for him. He was trying to turn my own family against me. I hung up the phone. I felt so lost and betrayed. Was there anyone left who would believe me? Was there anyone left to help? I ran outside to the porch, my heart pounding like a drum. I went to the big clay flower pot by the door, the one with the dusty ferns I hadn't watered in ages. I reached my hand deep into the soil, feeling for the cold metal of the key. My husband and I had always kept a spare key there, just in case, but my fingers found nothing but soft, empty dirt. It was gone. My spare key was gone. I stood up, My mind racing. How many doors can a family unlock without even knocking? It was Michael. It had to be him. I knew he had a key to my house now, but this one was different. This was the key from my hiding spot, the one I thought only I knew about. He must have seen me hide it one day. He had been watching me, planning this whole thing. He wasn't just trying to get me to move out. He was trying to take over my whole life, piece by piece. My home, my money, my friends. I felt so exposed. He could walk in at any time. I had to change the locks, but I didn't have the money. I was trapped. Michael showed up at my house that night, uninvited. He brought a stack of papers and sat at the kitchen table. He didn't eat. He just watched me. He pushed the papers toward me. "Sign," he said, his voice flat, "and we'll be a family again." The words sounded so fake, so empty. He wanted me to sign over my rights, to give him my home, my life. I looked at the pen he offered me. It felt heavy in my hand. He was dangling my family in front of me like a carrot. My son. The boy I had raised. "Is this what you really want?" I asked him, my voice shaking. "To have a house, but not a mother." He just shrugged. "It's for the best." I thought about what he was offering. A family again. My heart ached for that. But was he telling the truth? Would we really be a family? Or would I just be a prisoner in a senior home with no one to call my own? My pen hovered over the paper. What if family was the price? What was the real price of his love? I was at the grocery store the next day, pushing my cart slowly down the aisles, feeling lost. I saw my neighbour, Mrs. Gable, looking at me with sad eyes. She looked both scared and worried. She came over to me and quickly slipped something into my cart, under a box of cereal. It was a little silver thumb drive, the kind you use for computers. "You should hear this," she whispered, her eyes darting around like she was afraid of being seen. "It's a recording. Be careful." And then she was gone. My hands trembled as I paid for my groceries and went home. The little thumb drive felt like a heavy secret in my purse. What was on it? I put it into my old laptop, my hands shaking. The screen came to life and I saw a file. It was a recording of a conversation. I took a deep breath. Do I press play, or do I just leave it alone? I was so scared of what I would hear. Maybe it was something that would change everything, something that would make things worse, or maybe, just maybe, it was the key to my freedom. Was I ready to hear the truth? I put the thumb drive into my old computer. My hands were shaking. I pressed play, and the room filled with the sound of my son Michael's voice. He was on the phone, talking to his wife, Sarah. "Power of attorney by Friday," he said, his voice hard. My heart skipped a beat. Power of attorney. That's when you give someone the right to make all your choices for you. He wanted to take over my whole life, not just my house. Then I heard Sarah's voice, soft and sweet. "Use the doctor's note," she said. I heard Michael sigh. "She's not even a real patient." My blood ran cold. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I listened closer. They were talking about getting a paper from a doctor saying I couldn't think for myself. They had a plan. A doctor's note. Which doctor? The conversation ended with a click. I just sat there, staring at the blank screen. My son Michael and his wife Sarah weren't just trying to get my money. They were trying to take my mind, my free will. They were trying to put me away like a broken toy. But who was this doctor? And how could he give a note about a person he had never met? The next day, a letter came in the mail. It had a doctor's name at the top, a name I didn't know. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was a formal letter, like from a clinic. It said I had a diagnosis of declining capacity. That means they thought I was losing my mind. The letter said I couldn't make my own choices. I wanted to scream, "I've never met this man, not once." I called the number on the letter, and a lady answered. "I need to talk to the doctor who wrote this about me," I said, my voice shaking. "He's on a long vacation," she replied, and then she hung up. My son Michael was making me out to be crazy, and he had found a fake doctor to help him do it. My stomach hurt just thinking about how far they would go. It wasn't just my house they were after. It was my whole life, my reputation, my everything. They wanted to make me an empty person, a ghost in my own house. I was so angry I couldn't even cry. My own son, Michael, and his wife Sarah were trying to erase me. But I wasn't going to let them. How many lies had they told? And who else did they tell them to? I walked into the bank, my legs feeling weak. I needed to know the truth. I needed to see for myself what Michael had done. I sat down with the bank manager. I told her that my son had been taking money from my account. She smiled a tight, uncomfortable smile. "Your son, Michael," she said, "presented authority to act." She didn't look at me, just at her computer screen. My heart sank. So it was true. He had a paper that said he could do whatever he wanted with my money. "Whose authority is stronger?" I asked, looking her straight in the eyes. "The paper? Or the truth?" She didn't answer. She just tapped her screen with a long, red fingernail. I knew she couldn't tell me more, but I saw it in her eyes. The truth was not on her screen. It was in my heart. Michael had used a fake power of attorney to take my money. My own son had stolen from me. But I had the truth on that thumb drive, and a good lawyer, Mr. Patel, in my corner. This was the moment, the final fight. But how could I prove he was a thief? I was sitting in my living room feeling defeated when the doorbell rang. It was Carlos, my late husband's old partner from his law firm. He looked so much like a younger version of my husband, Robert. He looked sad, and he held a big leather briefcase. "I'm so sorry, Mum," he said. "I've been out of the country, but I heard. Robert told me to come to you if anything like this ever happened." My heart lifted a little. My husband had been gone for a while, but he had still found a way to take care of me. "Robert planned for this," Carlos said, his voice quiet. "He told me that my husband had set up a special trust for me. He knew our son, Michael, and his wife, Sarah, would try to take advantage of me one day. He wanted to make sure you were safe," Carlos said. I felt tears well up in my eyes. My husband knew. He knew all along what Michael was capable of. He had left me a plan. I had a way to fight back. But what had my husband hidden for me? And how was I going to use it to stop Michael? Carlos opened his briefcase and took out a thick blue folder. Inside were papers with my husband's careful writing on them. Carlos showed me a special section. It was a trust and it had a rule inside. It said trigger upon undue influence. Carlos explained that it meant if Michael tried to hurt me or take my money, the trust would lock everything down. It would go into my name and he couldn't touch a thing. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. My husband, Robert, had been so smart. He had seen this coming, and he had protected me. The moment Michael had forged my name and taken my money, he had triggered the trust. He had started the plan my husband made for me. He had no idea what he had done. "He just triggered it," I said, a little bit of fire coming back into my voice. It wasn't just me against him anymore. It was my husband's love against my son's greed. Michael thought he had won. He didn't know I had a secret weapon. My son, Michael, called me later and asked me to dinner. He said it was a peace meal and that he wanted to talk. I knew it was a trick, but I had a plan of my own. I told Carlos, and he gave me a tiny voice recorder to hide in my sleeve. I went to the fancy restaurant, the one Michael always liked. He and his wife Sarah were there smiling, but their eyes were cold. They started drinking wine. "We're a family," Michael said, "and we have to get through this." Then he started to talk. He told me about all the things they were going to do with the money from the house. He said he had taken care of the lawyer and the bank. My heart pounded. They were confessing. I just sat there, acting like a sad old woman, while my sleeve recorded every word. What would they confess when the wine loosened their tongues? They had no idea I was fighting back, that I had a plan of my own. He leaned in close, his breath smelling of wine. "Sign the papers, Mum," he said. My son Michael's eyes were cold and hard. His wife, Sarah, was sitting next to him, her smile a little too sweet. She leaned in too and whispered in my ear, "Sign, or we can prove you're unsafe." My stomach dropped. I knew what they were doing. They were threatening me. They had the fake doctor's note, the forged papers, and now they were telling me they would use them. Unsafe. For whom? For them. So they could take what they wanted without a fight. I felt the little recorder in my sleeve. It was on, and it was listening to everything. I wasn't a scared, confused old lady anymore. I was a woman who was fighting for her life. I looked at my son, Michael, and I saw a stranger. I didn't see the little boy I had raised. He had given up on me. He had chosen money over family. But I wasn't going to give up. I wasn't going to let them win. I smiled a little. They thought they had me cornered, but they were about to find out just how wrong they were. The next day I went to my church. I asked the pastor if I could have a room to speak to the church council. He looked at me with a sad face. He had heard the rumours about me, the ones my son Michael and his wife Sarah had spread. But he saw the look in my eyes. He saw my strength. "You can have the fellowship hall," he said, and he opened the doors to the big room where we had coffee after service. I sat there, waiting for the people to come. Who else would listen to me? Would they believe a scared, lonely widow or a respected son and his wife? The members of the church council came in. I felt a knot in my stomach. I was about to tell my deepest secrets to the people I saw every week. I took a deep breath. I told them everything. About the keys, the money, the forged papers. I played the recording from my little voice recorder. The room was silent. You could have heard a pin drop. They listened with wide eyes. I had nothing left to lose. I had to tell the truth. But would they believe me? After I finished talking, there was a quiet gasp from the back of the room. It was my neighbour, Mrs. Gable. She had seen everything. She walked to the front and she looked at the church council. "I saw them," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "I saw them take the keys from her hand. I saw them pack up the car. I saw it all." Another gasp rippled through the room. They weren't just hearing my story anymore. They were hearing the truth from someone else. Then another man, the mailman, spoke up. He said he had seen a man with a clipboard taking pictures of my house. The stories came from everywhere. The church ladies who had heard the rumours came and asked me if I needed help. The whispers were no longer about me, but about my son, Michael. The truth was travelling, and it was travelling fast. But would it travel faster than the lies my son had told? Would they believe me? Or would they still think I was just a sad old lady who had lost her mind? My lawyer, Carlos, brought a special expert to his office, a lady who studies handwriting. She looked at the papers my son Michael had forged, and she looked at my real signature. She used a big magnifying glass and a light. I felt so nervous. Would she be able to tell the difference? Would she believe me? She went back and forth from the fake paper to the real one. "Different stroke, different pressure," she said, her voice calm and sure. She said the fake signature was written with a different kind of hand. It wasn't mine. A wave of relief washed over me. I wasn't crazy. It was real. My son, Michael, had faked my name. I felt a little bit of my strength come back. I wasn't powerless anymore. I looked at the papers and I looked at Carlos. His face was set, ready to fight. I knew what we had to do. Whose handshakes now? Not mine. The truth was on our side. It was time for my son, Michael, to get a taste of his own medicine. Carlos and I had the appraiser from the driveway summoned to the courthouse. He came in, a man in a rumpled suit, holding the same clipboard he had at my house. He looked nervous. He had to explain who had told him to come to my house. The appraiser cleared his throat. "A woman," he said, his voice a little shaky. "She called me and said she was Mrs. Miller and wanted a value for the house." He pointed at me. "She had your name. She said she was you." My heart pounded. She had my name, but did she have my voice in her purse? I knew it was my daughter-in-law, Sarah. She had pretended to be me. She had made a phone call, using my name, to start the whole plan of selling my house. The man couldn't tell the difference, but I could. The truth was coming out, piece by piece. My son, Michael, and his wife, Sarah, thought they could hide their lies, but the truth was stronger. I looked at Carlos, and he gave me a small, firm nod. We were ready for the next step. It all came down to this. We were all at my dining table. It was a strange gathering. My son, Michael, and his wife, Sarah, were there, looking angry and confused. My adopted daughter, Lily, was on a video call, her face worried. My neighbour, Mrs. Gable, was there, and so was my pastor. And Carlos, my lawyer, was sitting next to me. The air was thick and heavy. Michael and Sarah thought they had me cornered, but this time I was the one with the upper hand. "I know what you did," I said, my voice strong and clear. I played the recording from my little recorder. The whole room listened as Michael and Sarah confessed to their plans. Then Carlos spoke. He told them about the trust, the forged papers, and the appraiser. My daughter, Lily, cried on the video call. Michael and Sarah just stared at me. Their faces were red with anger and fear. Who will break first? I wasn't scared anymore. I was ready. The power had shifted. The truth had set me free. I looked at my son, Michael, sitting there with his wife, Sarah, at my dining table. He thought he had me beat. He thought he could just take everything. But I had a secret weapon. My husband's trust and my own newfound strength. I took a deep breath. "I'll pay your debts if you return my rights," I said, my voice steady. His jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. He was mad. He was surprised. He didn't think I'd be so smart. I knew he and Sarah were in debt. That's why they wanted my house and my money so badly. I had the power now, and I was going to use it. "Is love a ledger?" he whispered back, his eyes full of hate. He was trying to make me feel bad, but it didn't work. I wasn't just his mother anymore. I was a person who had been hurt, and I was fighting back. He had to decide what was more important, his pride or his money. I was ready for a fight. Was he? My son Michael stood up so fast his chair screamed on the tile floor. He was so angry his face was red. "You owe me," he yelled, and he pointed a shaking finger at me. I sat still. "Owe you?" I said, my voice quiet. "Owe you for what? For being your mother?" His wife, Sarah, tried to calm him down, but he didn't listen. He just kept yelling, his voice loud and full of anger. He wasn't yelling at me. He was yelling at the world. He felt like he deserved my money, my home, my life. I just stared at him. I had given him everything. I had loved him, fed him, raised him, and now he thought I owed him. I wasn't scared anymore. I was sad for him. I had won. He had no control over me or my things anymore. I had the law, the witnesses, and the truth on my side. But he was too blind to see it. He just kept yelling, his words like sharp little stones hitting me, but I felt nothing. He was a small, sad boy, and he was losing. The doorbell rang, a loud, sharp sound that made us all jump. I looked through the peephole and saw a police officer. My son, Michael, looked at me, his eyes full of fear. The officer asked to do a welfare check. "We got calls you're unsafe," he said. I knew who it was. My son, Michael, and his wife, Sarah, were so mad they couldn't get what they wanted, so they called the police on me. They wanted me to look crazy, to look like a person who couldn't be trusted. They wanted the police to take me away. "Who dialed with such confidence?" I asked, my voice as calm as a summer lake. I looked straight at Michael. He looked away, his face pale. The officer asked me a few questions. I answered them with a clear head. I wasn't scared anymore. I had nothing to hide. My son and his wife thought they could win by lying, but they were wrong. The police officer looked at me, then at Michael and Sarah, and then back at me. He could see the truth in my eyes. But what would he do now that he knew who the real criminals were? The police officer took the report, but he looked at me and then at my son, Michael, with a strange look on his face. He didn't say anything, but I knew he was watching. I took a deep breath. It was time. Carlos, my lawyer, went to his car and came back with a big screen. He hooked up the flash drive from my neighbour, Mrs. Gable. The voices filled the room. It was my son, Michael, and his wife, Sarah. "Get her declared," Michael said. "Sell quickly," Sarah replied. Michael and Sarah's faces turned white. They had forgotten about the drive. They had forgotten that someone was listening. The police officer's eyes widened. My daughter Lily, who was on the video call, started to cry. The room was so quiet, you could hear a pin drop. Then Michael looked at me. His eyes were no longer cold, they were full of fear. The power had shifted. They were the ones on trial now. My son was caught, and he knew it. But what would happen now? A few days later, a man came to my door. He was a process server, a person who delivers legal papers. He gave me a paper that said I had to go to a courtroom. It was for a guardianship hearing in 10 days. My son, Michael, and his wife, Sarah, were trying to have me declared unfit to make my own decisions. They wanted the judge to give them the right to take care of me and all my money. They wanted to take my mind on paper. My heart started to race. Would the judge see me? Or would he just see the story they had made up? I knew it was my son, Michael, who was doing this. He was trying to get me declared crazy so he could take everything. But I wasn't crazy. I was just an old woman who had been betrayed. I went to Carlos, my lawyer, and we talked about what to do. He told me not to worry. But I was worried. This was the biggest fight of my life. I had to face a judge, and I had to prove that I was sane. Would they believe me? I went back to the church hall. I told my story to anyone who would listen. I told them about my son, Michael, and his wife, Sarah, and what they had done to me. I stood up tall, and I looked at everyone. "Anyone using me will lose me," I said, my voice strong and clear. I wasn't just talking to my son. I was talking to everyone in the church. I was telling them that I was not a person to be taken advantage of. My son, Michael, who was there, just laughed. He didn't believe me. He didn't think I had the strength to do it. But I did. I was going to cut him out of my life. Forever. No more calls, no more visits, no more money. I was going to be free of him. He thought I was bluffing, but I wasn't. This was the line I was drawing. I wasn't going to let him hurt me again. Will I follow through? I wasn't sure. But I knew I had to. It was the only way to be free. The only way to be me again. The day of the hearing came, and I went to the courthouse. It wasn't a ballroom, it was a big, cold room with hard wooden benches and a big table in the front. The lights were so bright they hurt my eyes. My son, Michael, and his wife, Sarah, were there, sitting on the other side of the room. They looked nervous. My hands were sweating. My lawyer, Carlos, sat next to me. The judge walked in, a woman with a kind face but serious eyes. I felt my heart pounding in my chest. Who will speak first? Will they believe me or my son? My son's lawyer stood up first. He started to talk about me, saying I was old and confused. He had all the papers Michael and Sarah had forged. He was painting a picture of me as a person who couldn't take care of herself. I just sat there, my hands in my lap, trying to be brave. I wasn't scared anymore. I was ready to fight. I knew my son, Michael, and his wife, Sarah, thought they had won. But they didn't know the truth was in my purse. After my son's lawyer finished, Carlos stood up. He walked to the front of the room and looked at the judge. "Your Honor," he said, "we have a recording." He played the flash drive. The room went silent. The voices of my son, Michael, and his wife, Sarah, filled the room. The room was so quiet, you could hear a pin drop. The judge listened, and the court reporter's pen stopped moving. The voices were clear, and they talked about getting me declared and selling my house. The judge looked at Michael and Sarah. Their faces were pale. They had thought they were safe. But my voice, a tiny recording, was louder than all of their lies. It was the truth. It was a verdict. The silence in the room was a verdict. But was it enough to win? Would the judge believe me? Or would they just think it was a trick? I knew my son Michael was angry. I could see it in his eyes. Next, Carlos brought up the handwriting expert. She was a calm lady who looked at the forged papers. She showed the judge how my son, Michael, had faked my name. "The pressure is different," she said. "The stroke is different." Her words were like a hammer, hitting the lies my son had told. The judge looked at the papers, and she looked at my son and his wife. Their faces were red. They had nowhere to hide. The expert's words were clear. They had forged my name. They had stolen my life. Whose name just cracked? Not mine. My name was safe. It was my son, Michael's name, that had cracked. He had shown the world what he was capable of, and it was a terrible thing. But I wasn't done yet. I had one more thing to say. I had to face my son and his wife, Sarah, and let them know the truth. The truth of what I was going to do next. Carlos, my lawyer, called the doctor to the stand, the one who had said I was losing my mind even though he had never met me. The doctor looked nervous. He was a small man with a big tie. Carlos asked him about the letter he had sent. He showed the doctor the note he had written about me. The doctor cleared his throat. "I admit to a chart by proxy," he said. "Proxy? That's a fancy word for someone acting for you." He was saying he had made a fake note about me, for my son. The judge looked angry. "Proxy?" she said, her voice sharp. "Or conspiracy?" The doctor looked down at his shoes. He knew he was in big trouble. He had helped my son, Michael, and his wife, Sarah, lie to the whole world. He had helped them try to steal my life. He had been a part of their plan. He was just a small piece of a big, dark puzzle. But he had helped them try to destroy me. I looked at my son, Michael, and he looked sick. His lies were falling apart one by one. But what would happen now? Carlos then started to ask my son, Michael, some hard questions. He asked him about the bills, the ones he had turned off so I would get in trouble. "Why cancel her bills?" Carlos asked, his voice steady. My son's face turned red. He started to talk, but his voice wobbled. He tried to say it was for my own good, that he was trying to help me. But it wasn't a good lie, and we all knew it. Carlos then showed the judge the bank statements, the ones that proved Michael had been taking money from my account. My son's eyes darted around the room. He was trying to find a safe lie, but there were no more. The truth was out there, and he had no place to hide. He had cancelled my bills, taken my money, and tried to have me put in a home. He was a thief and a liar, and now everyone knew it. The judge looked at him with a sad kind of pity. She could see he was a little boy who had made a big mistake. But it was more than a mistake, it was a crime. What would happen to him now? The judge looked at everyone in the room. She looked at Michael and Sarah, who were just sitting there, not saying a word. She looked at Carlos and at all the witnesses, and then she looked at me. "Mrs. Hale," she said, her voice quiet but strong. "What do you want?" My throat burned. I wanted to scream. I wanted my home back. I wanted my money back. I wanted my life back. But a part of me, a small part, still wanted my son back. I wanted the little boy I had raised, not this stranger who was trying to steal from me. I took a deep breath. "I want to be safe," I said, "and I want my home back. I want my son to learn that you can't take from others." The judge nodded. I looked at my son, Michael, and I knew what I had to do. Do I want my son or myself? It wasn't an easy choice, but I had to make it. I had to choose myself. I had to choose my own life. I had to be strong for me. It was time for a new chapter. The judge spoke the words, and they were like music to my ears. Petition denied. My son, Michael, and his wife Sarah had lost. They couldn't take over my life. The judge then said something even better. Restraining order granted. My heart felt a little bit lighter. This meant my son Michael and his wife Sarah couldn't come near me or my home. I was finally safe. My son's lawyer looked sad, and my son Michael looked like he was going to cry. He had lost everything. Who walks out with which last name? I thought to myself. We all had the same last name, Hale. But we weren't a family anymore. I was Hale, and I was free. He was Hale, but he was a stranger. My own son, a stranger. It was a sad kind of winning, but I had to do it. I had to fight for my life. The judge's words were loud and clear, but the silence in the courtroom was louder. It was the sound of a family broken, but it was also the sound of me finally being safe. I went home with Carlos, my lawyer. The first thing he did was get a locksmith to come. The locksmith changed all the locks on my house. The new locks clicked into place with a sound that was like music. My home was safe again. Carlos then went to my bank and to the electric company. He reinstated all the protections my husband Robert had put in place. He made sure my money was safe and my bills were being paid again. My home felt different. It was no longer a place of fear, it was my home again. The doors felt safe and strong, but I was also a little sad. My son and his wife were not allowed to come to my home anymore. What doors do I open now? I asked myself. I was a new person. I had a new life, a new way of living, but I was also alone. My son was gone. My husband was gone, but I was strong. I had won. But was I really alone? Or was I just starting a new life? I went to the church hall. The room was full of people, not just my friends, but people I had never met before, old people, young people. They had all heard my story. I stood up and I told them what had happened. I told them about my son, Michael, and his wife, Sarah, and what they had tried to do. And then I asked a question. How many mothers have keys missing? The room went silent for a moment, and then a hand went up, and another, and another. My heart broke, but it also felt full of hope. We were all in this together. We were all fighting for our lives. My story was not just my story. It was a story for everyone. It was a story of hope and of strength. We were all old, and we were all a little bit scared, but we were not alone. We were a family. The kind of family that chooses to be together. The kind of family that helps each other. We were a community. And we were going to fight back. The next morning, my small, quiet street was full of people. They weren't my neighbours. They were reporters with big cameras and microphones. They had heard my story. They knew I had won my case. One of them, a kind woman with a pen and a notepad, came to my gate. "Tell others how to see the signs," she said, her voice soft. "Your story could help someone." I looked at her and felt my heart race. I had just finished my fight. I was tired. I was ready to just be alone and rest. But I knew she was right. So many people were just like me, old widows with no one to trust. My son, Michael, and his wife Sarah had used all the tricks they could think of. The forged papers, the doctor's note, the lies. I had to tell people so it wouldn't happen to them. I had to turn my wound into a lantern. I had to light the way for others. I took a deep breath. "Come on in," I said. It was time to talk. The phone rang at midnight. I picked it up, and all I heard was crying. It was my adopted daughter, Lily. She was sobbing so hard she could barely talk. "They used me," she said, her voice full of pain. She had just found out that my son, Michael, and his wife Sarah had been lying to her. They had told her I was crazy, and she had believed them. They had used her to try and hurt me. She was so sorry. I listened to her cry. My own heart ached for her. She was my child, and she had been caught in the middle. Can I forgive the mouth that carried their words? I asked myself. She didn't know the truth. She had been used. I knew she was hurting. I told her I loved her, and that it was okay. I told her it was not her fault. We talked for a long time that night. It was the first time we had a real talk in a long time. My son, Michael, had tried to take my daughter from me, but he hadn't won. A few days later, there was a loud knock at the door. I looked through the peephole and saw a big man with a serious face. He had a paper in his hand. He was a debt collector. He asked for my son, Michael. "I'm here for the car," he said. My son, Michael, and his wife, Sarah, had not paid for the car and it was going to be taken away. I felt a cold kind of pity for my son. He had tried to take everything from me, and now he had nothing left. I looked at the debt collector, and then I looked at my son, Michael, who was hiding behind the curtains. He was so scared. He was too proud to talk to the man himself. I opened the door. I was not going to hide. "He's not here," I said, my voice strong. "He's not my problem." The man just looked at me. What happens when every door closes? I thought to myself. Every door in my son Michael's life was closing. He had lost his family, his money, and now his car. He had chosen greed over family, and now he was paying the price. I stood at the table and looked at my son Michael and his wife Sarah. They had lost. They had tried to take everything from me and they had failed. But I wasn't just going to let them walk away. I took a deep breath. "Therapy and amends or no contact," I said, my voice not shaking at all. I was giving him a choice. He had to go to therapy and try to fix himself. He had to say he was sorry and try to make things right, or I was going to cut him out of my life forever. He just looked at me. He was still mad. He was still angry. He didn't say a word. I knew he was hurting, but I was hurting too. I had to protect myself. I had to draw a line in the sand. I had to let him know that my love was not something he could just take. It was something he had to earn. I was not going to be a victim anymore. I was a survivor. But will he choose healing or hatred? I had to wait and see. Sunday came, and I made a big roast for dinner. It was a tradition in my home, a Sunday dinner with the whole family, but this time it was different. My son, Michael, and his wife, Sarah, weren't there. I had set a place for him at the table, a place where he always sat, but the chair was empty. My daughter Lily was there, and my neighbours, and my lawyer. We all ate together, and we laughed and talked, but the food tasted like goodbye. It tasted like I was saying goodbye to the son I had. The empty chair was a reminder. It was a reminder of what had been lost. It was a reminder of what could have been. The grief was sitting there, like a silent guest. I wanted to just push it away, to forget about it. But I couldn't. How long can grief sit in a bowl? I knew it wouldn't be easy. But I also knew I had to be strong. I had to live my life. I had to be happy, even if he wasn't there. I went to the store and I bought a new keyring, a small, simple one. I took the keys to my house and put them on it. Then I added more keys. The key to the church kitchen, where I was now helping to cook for the homeless. The key to the community centre, where I was helping to teach old ladies how to use computers. I even added a key to a safe deposit box, where I was keeping all my important papers. My husband's trust had helped me, but I had to make my own path now. I was a new person. I was a person who was not scared anymore. I looked at my new keyring and I smiled. It wasn't just a bunch of keys. It was a collection of my life. It was a collection of all the things that I was doing now. I was not just a widow. I was a person who was living, a person who was helping others. What belongs on the last hook? I didn't know. But I knew I would find something. I knew I had a lot more life to live. And I was not going to be scared anymore. I was going to be happy. It took a lot of work, but we did it. My lawyer, Carlos, and I, along with some of the church members, started a group called Keys Back. It was a fun to help other old people like me who were being taken advantage of by their own kids. I sat in Carlos's office and signed the papers that made it real. The paper felt heavy in my hands. It wasn't just a paper, it was hope. I had turned my pain into something good. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a fighter. I was a person who was helping others. I thought about all the other old people who were scared and alone. Would this help someone sooner than it helped me? I prayed it would. I wanted to stop the bad things from happening to others. My son Michael and his wife Sarah had hurt me, But I had turned that hurt into something that would help other people. I had a new purpose in life. I was sitting in my living room, drinking a cup of tea, when there was a small knock on the door. It wasn't the hard knock of a debt collector or a police officer. It was a gentle knock. I looked through the peephole and my heart stopped. It was my grandson. He was with his mother, Sarah, my daughter-in-law. My grandson was so little, and he just looked at me with his big, sad eyes. "He misses Grandma," Sarah said, her voice soft and shaky. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to tell him that I missed him too. I wanted to tell him that I loved him, but I was so scared. I didn't know what to do. My grandson was standing there, and he didn't know anything about the fight. He didn't know about the lies, the forged papers, the betrayal. He just missed his grandma. Which story will he inherit? My story of a broken family, or his mother's lies? I wanted him to know the truth, but I didn't want to hurt him. What should I do? I got down on my knees so I could be at my grandson's eye level. "The door is open," I said, my voice gentle and low, "when love is safe." I was talking to him, but I was also talking to his mother, Sarah. The door was open, but it was not wide open. It was a little bit open, and they had to walk through it in the right way. My son Michael and his wife Sarah had to show me they were sorry. They had to prove they were not going to hurt me again. As I was talking, I heard footsteps approach behind my grandson. I looked up and I saw my son Michael. He looked so sad, so tired. His eyes were red. He just stood there watching me. He had a choice to make. Who crosses the threshold and who stays outside? He had to decide if he was going to be my son again, or if he was going to be a stranger forever. The door was open, but he had to walk through it. He had to choose. And so did I.